The program you are about to see, Mightier Than Missiles, contains a vital message for audiences today, although it was filmed more than 25 years ago. Author and producer Dr. Robert Spitzer saw communism firsthand during trips to Europe in the 1950s and 60s. His personal observations convinced him that, as they still do today, most Americans really don't understand communism, nor do we fully appreciate the great value and power of freedom. A quarter of a century ago, the Russians were assembling a tremendous arsenal of missiles. Third world countries were succumbing to the thin veneer and false promises of communism. Even within our own nation, some citizens seemed intrigued by the writings of Marx and Lenin for the wrong reasons. The world now knows the truth about communism. This film, visionary in its message, ahead of its time, remains important today as one country after another chooses between communism and freedom.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are fortunate to have as our speaker a man who in his busy spare time sells one of the world's most important products. It's a product that each one of us already has, but it's a product that perhaps all too many of us take for granted. Our speaker has been making his sales presentation to audiences just like this for the past 20 years. In fact, he has spoken to over 1 million people. Our speaker is a world traveler. He has traveled and spoken in nearly all of the 50 states and has visited 11 foreign countries. And many of these countries were behind the Iron Curtain, but that's a part of his sales story, too. Our guest holds a doctorate in biochemistry from the University of Wisconsin. He has served as a teacher. He has written and published many papers on the technical aspects of agriculture. He is, in fact, recognized as one of America's leading agricultural authorities. And when he's not facing audiences such as this, he serves as the president of the Murphy Products Company in Burlington, Wisconsin, a firm that serves the American farmer with high-quality feeding concentrates. It is my pleasure to introduce to you one of America's outstanding salesmen, Dr. Robert R. Spitzer. Dr. Spitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. In introducing me, your chairman purposely failed to mention the product that I'm selling. That's my job, of course. Recent events have made me even more keenly aware of the need for my product. There, it's out. The product that I sell is freedom. It's not my product, but our product, created here in America to a degree not achieved anywhere else in the world, giving you freedom to worship, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom of opportunity, freedom to govern, freedom to own your own property, to work at a job of your choice, or to go into business for yourself, and freedom of the privacy of your own home. It might surprise you that freedom has to be advertised, that freedom has to be sold. We must start selling hard because there is another product that is competing with freedom, a product that has been sold to 1/3 of the world's population. I think you already know what the other product is. It is atheistic communism. An inferior product? I hope we all know that it is. However, we need to be reminded that there are people who believe in communism, They're outselling it vigorously. There are others who are disinterested or who know little about communism or freedom. We all should be able to recall some facts about our American product of freedom. How hard we had to fight for it in the early days of the American colonies. We don't have to think too hard to recount the times that we nearly lost our freedom. Our first test was the War of 1812. Our nation faced a crisis in the Civil War, and we made great sacrifices in the First and Second World War. Our men died in the Korean War, which almost exploded into World War III. Yes, freedom can be won and lost on the battlefields, and we are prepared to wage war to preserve it. But there are other ways to lose our freedoms. This priceless product can be taken away gradually. For instance, we hear people promoting some sugar-coated pink pill that will cure a domestic economic headache, a shortcut without effort, a way that supposedly doesn't cost you a cent. Many of these pink pills are tranquilizers that carry the trademark of socialism. And sometimes the real manufacturer is communism. Socialism and communism can't really cure a thing. It claims it will take care of your welfare better than you can yourself, but I don't believe this. America's strength has been individual effort and enterprise. Now, what is freedom made of? As a nation and as individuals, we have an obligation to put freedom in plain view in the showcase of world politics. What can be said about freedom that will offset the advance of communism? How can we prove that freedom is truly mightier than missiles? Let me tell you how I look at it. My life is centered around my family, my work, and our community of Burlington, Wisconsin. I'm grateful for the opportunity that my wife and I have in raising our family in a free country. We don't ask for security or guaranteed income, just opportunity in a free society. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to help our company serve the great American farm community. It's our job to help farmers increase food production efficiency, raise the standards of farm and community living. And I like to think that as we help others to prosper, we create more jobs. A company such as ours, any farm, any business can grow and prosper only in an atmosphere of freedom. For me, freedom and opportunity begins right here in Burlington. It's on some maps, but not all of them. We think it's a fine little town. Not perfect, but we're working on it. We have good local government. Why? Because our citizens will take time to hold public office. Although they are busy with their work and business, they willingly serve on civic committees. New schools and churches are being built. Our rescue squad and fire department are entirely volunteer units. Our community-owned hospital facilities have expanded. Again, responsible citizens care enough to serve without pay on hospital boards and committees. The same with our schools. Excellent, because people care. We in Burlington try to recognize the responsibility that goes along with freedom. It's good to know that our policemen are concerned with safety awards and low accident rates, instead of being muscles of a strong-arm superstate. This is our weekly newspaper. Its editor is free to print the truth. His paper is not run by a government bureau or party officials. How fortunate for America to have a freedom of press, radio, and TV. Our merchants exemplify free enterprise in action. I'm proud that our town is growing. Right here is the secret of a country's growth. It lies in individual growth, companies' growth, communities' growth, motivated by the rewards of service and profit. And where there's freedom of personal ownership, people care about the little things too. Beauty is not a luxury when it comes from the heart. How much is there in the communist budget for something like this? Yes, all in all, we think Burlington is a pretty fine place. It's a lot like your community, isn't it? But no matter how much you and I like our hometown, it's not the whole world. For what happens in Omaha, Cleveland, London, Budapest, and Moscow affects us and our way of life. Freedom lost anywhere means a lot more freedom lost on our main street. We all know that communism wants to dominate the world. Mr. Kay has said, we cannot expect Americans to jump from capitalism to communism overnight, but we can assist their leaders in giving small doses of socialism to the people until they suddenly awake one morning and find that they have communism. Doesn't he know the simple strength of our families, our churches, our heritage? Doesn't he know the faith that brought the Pilgrims to Plymouth Rock? And Concord Bridge. It should remind the world that we were willing to fight against tyranny since the first dawn of American history and freedom. Does he know so little about the fortitude of Americans, so little about our people, who in 200 years, through faith and freedom and work, have built a nation of, by, and for the people? A nation that has made more progress for more people than this earth had seen in 4,000 years. This historic home continues to stand as a shrine for the initial victory of American liberty. The role of George Washington in freedom's history is known in every free-thinking society in the world. Even the Russians can't erase this position. Americans have always risen, both in peace and war, to preserve our freedom, sometimes with the rifle, sometimes with work, faith, enterprise, and citizenship. The history of America is clear and stands behind the product of freedom for all time. Its struggles and achievements are in plain view for all to see. Freedom covers up nothing. Communism, on the other hand, must build walls to hide the truth from the world. Let's go behind the red wall, take a close look at communism, and compare it to freedom. As a preview of what I found behind the Iron Curtain, we found failure. Failure in living standards, failure as a government, and failure of the farm economy. A failure not from the weather, but from inefficient governmental planning, destruction of individual enterprise. After 50 years of communism, they have a standard of living so inferior that high prices and scarcity is the way of life. Compared with the free world, they are neither well-fed, well-housed, nor well-clothed. But what do the Russians want you to really see? They want to show you the display window of communism, the sights of Moscow, designed to promote the Red system. Here's Red Square, the mecca of communism. Reds from the communistic world are flown here by the thousands to give inspiration to their state-controlled lives. Stalin was once buried here beside Lenin. In Russia, even their heritage and the dead can lose favor. We were told that Christianity was only a matter of historical interest, and that Lenin and science are the spiritual guides for the Russian people, and someday would be our God too. Ancient churches like St. Basil's are now museums where religion is viewed as something historical in a long forgotten past. The red star has replaced the cross. I saw the people, good people, the faces of Russia and the friendly faces of the children. But what hope is there for these youngsters spiritually when atheism is one of their basic school subjects? Early in my visit, I became aware of the daily domination and the control of the mind of the individual. Evidence of this were the pictures of party leaders on billboards. Giant slogans to inspire the workers in a society where no one seems to care. Without private ownership, there's little reason for personal excellence and enterprise. It is difficult, unless you see it, to imagine what it's like to continually live in a controlled atmosphere, where every avenue of communication is under state control: radio, television, newspapers, and books. Russia is a government-controlled superstate. The individual means nothing. What about quality in craftsmanship, pride in accomplishment? I saw but little. I kept wondering why anyone could be enticed by such a way of life. How could anyone, given a choice, choose communism over freedom? In agriculture, their failure is even more obvious. We were proudly shown this milking machine as though we couldn't have seen one in America. These farmers were told a Russian invented it. This is not a picture of a harvest taken 30 years ago. I shot it on our visit. These scenes still predominate the rural areas of the Iron Curtain. These are the faces of the Russian farmer, good people who work hard but benefit little for their labors. Life is difficult and pay not good. The party tells them what to plant and then takes away most of the results. The families on this collective farm receive 740 rubles, about $800 for the year's labor for the whole family. Here's another fact about living conditions. Heat for their government-owned homes was from dried cow manure. The Russians were proud of these 242 pigs cared for by 7 people. These animals were 10 months of age and still not to market. Compare these Russian cows with those raised in America. Their national average is between 4,000 and 5,000 pounds of milk per cow, 50% under the average U.S. production. Feed costs for a dozen eggs from these hens exceeded 50 cents a dozen, nearly 4 times the cost on a good American poultry farm. No wonder eggs cost $1.80 per dozen, oranges 30 to 40 cents apiece, and meat scarce and of inferior quality. All in all, it was not surprising to learn that the communists had to purchase wheat from the free world. The inefficiency of their collective farm economy results in continuing shortages. I believe that it's due to lack of personal incentive and the destruction of the profit motive. Interference by government and party leaders who know little about running a farm, and no private agricultural industry to help farmers apply new facts. 45% of the Soviet people are needed to man their farms, whereas 10% of our American people can produce more than we can eat. Or putting it another way, one Russian farmer produces only enough food for 3 people, while one American farmer produces enough food for 28 people. Will we lose the battle for freedom? It's true that at any time freedom is but one generation away from extinction. I don't believe that we will lose this battle unless we fail as individuals and as families. I believe this won't happen unless a man loses his faith in the basic virtues of freedom. Belief in God, home, work, and opportunity. If he loses these things, he is morally bankrupt. He's ready to seek something else to live by. He's ripe to lose his freedom. What about the future? Our children. My two boys, Johnny and Jeff. What does America mean to them? It's a world now that revolves around our home, church, and school. Home? Well, it should be more than a house and a street. It's a place for children to grow, to feel the first wonders of freedom, and for parents to give guidance. The Word of God adds purpose and spiritual dimensions to values already acquired at home. Let's keep the cross on our churches. Let's always remember what happened to Russia's religious freedom. What makes us free? Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I like to think basic truths of hard work, religion, private ownership, and individual responsibility are a part of it. The stars and stripes are founded in our heritage. A salute to our flag, or the recognition of our national holidays are a reminder of our proud heritage. It reminds us of the price we've paid for freedom, starting with the shot that was heard round the world. That flag also means we can freely elect our leaders into office and vote them out too. Yes, it's on special days that we're reminded of our responsibility to preserve our freedoms. The 4th of July, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, other national holidays give us a special opportunity to stand up and be counted. How are we going to be sure of our freedoms tomorrow or next year? What can you and I, as ordinary citizens, do? We must realize that this is a battle for the hearts, minds, and souls of people. It will be won or lost not just in Moscow or Washington, but in your town and mine. Here's what you can do. Keep informed on local and national issues that affect your life. You have greater individual power than you realize. Write to your elected representatives. Tell them how you stand. Attend meetings. Speak out at your work, in your circle. Help your church to grow. The Reds fear the Church of our God because it's a major challenge to communism. Be alert against those who would destroy our religious freedoms. Those groups who would try to convince America that God doesn't belong in our heritage or in our teachings. Keep informed. Read more than one newspaper. Read several news magazines. Be firm in your convictions. Write to the editor of papers you read. Don't be afraid to tell him if you agree or disagree. The free press is one of our real strengths. Work for the political party that supports the principles you believe in. Vote every election day. Get involved and work in local campaigns. Maybe it's time you ran for public office. Become active in your own community affairs. However, don't support organizations that do not represent your beliefs. Examine what any group really stands for before you join it. Help our schools to teach the real America. Encourage and reward good teachers. That's where parents can really help out, by attending school meetings, joining parent-teachers groups, and by supporting dedicated active school boards. In our work, let's not make security our only goal. Security is an empty promise of a welfare state and can lead to government domination of labor and management. Let's grow with the ideals of our forefathers as we work together in an atmosphere of fairness and individual accomplishment, of job freedom. And finally, there's the delight we can all find just seeing the beauty and grandeur of America. A part of freedom is the right to travel, to enjoy the bountiful nature around us in your state and mine. This is the hand of God working in an atmosphere of freedom. You and I must leave no stone unturned in our efforts to save freedom and to extend it to our children and generations yet unborn. The most tragic assessment historians could make of us would be they failed to try. With your prayers and support, we can show the whole world that freedom is mightier than missiles.